Welcome, everybody. We're just getting set up online with the virtual picket today. We'll start in one moment. Welcome, everybody, to this virtual picket against the U.S. blockade on Cuba. It's such an honor to be here with all of you folks today, all around the world, as we join our united voices against the criminal and unjust U.S. blockade on Cuba. My name is Tamara Hansen, and it's a real honor for me to be here with all of you this evening. I am an executive member of the Canadian Network on Cuba, the coordinator of Vancouver Communities in Solidarity with Cuba, and author of 5 Decades of the Cuban Revolution, The Challenges of an Unwavering Leadership. My co-chair for the program today is Julio Fonseca, executive member of the Canadian Network on Cuba and president of the Juan Gualberto Gomez Association of Cuban Residents in Toronto. So once again, welcome everybody. Bienvenidos, saludos, salut, bienvenue to this monthly virtual picket to lift the U.S. blockade on Cuba, organized by the Canadian Network on Cuba, a coalition of 23 groups and organizations, along with individuals who stand together in solidarity with Cuba across Canada. We would also like to acknowledge the support and participation of La Table de Concertation et de Solidarité Québec-Cuba, the Cuba Coalition in Quebec. I am joining you today from New York City, the traditional and ancestral Lenape homelands. New York City is also the largest urban Indigenous population in the United States. I would like to invite everyone calling in from traditional Indigenous territories to take a moment to recognize our obligation to defend the right of self-determination of Indigenous nations, while we are calling on the U.S. government to respect Cuba's right to self-determination. I'm also here with Peggy Gilpin, longtime Cuba Solidarity activist as well as filmmaker, and we're really glad to be sharing this space with her this evening. This year marks 6 decades of cruel U.S. blockade against Cuba, making it the broadest and longest set of sanctions and punitive measures against a nation in contemporary history. While the blockade impacts many facets of Cuban life, from healthcare to education to infrastructure and beyond, Cuba continues to inspire the world with its free healthcare and education systems, as well as nationally developed and internationally recognized vaccines against the COVID-19 pandemic. While the Biden administration continues to enforce the unjust blockade, despite election promises to end the Trump-era tightening of this inhuman policy, we are continuing to organize. So we're so glad that you have joined the Canadian Network on Cuba for an excellent program of speakers as we unite our voices and demand lift the U.S. blockade on Cuba now. Je veux aussi remercier ceux qui sont avec nous, qui sont des membres francophones et des supporters francophones, d'être bienvenus à notre action de piquetage virtuel contre le blocus contre Cuba. Cette année marque 6 décennies de blocus américain cruel contre Cuba, ce qui fait en fait l'ensemble des sanctions et mesures punitives les plus larges et les plus longues contre une nation dans l'histoire contemporaine. Alors, le blocus affecte de nombreuses facettes de la vie cubaine, le soin de santé, le système d'éducation et l'infrastructure. Et au-delà, Cuba continue à inspirer le monde avec ses systèmes de santé et d'éducation gratuite, ainsi que les vaccins développés au niveau national et reconnus internationalement contre le COVID-19. Alors que l'administration du président Biden continue à appliquer le blocus injuste malgré ses promesses électorales de mettre fin au durcissement de cette politique inhumaine durant l'ère de Trump, nous continuerons à nous organiser. Nous sommes très reconnaissantes de vous avoir avec nous et le réseau canadien en solidarité avec Cuba pour un excellent programme de conférenciers contre le blocus et nous allons continuer avec notre demande fin au blocus des États-Unis contre Cuba. Merci. I'm now going to hand over the virtual microphone to my co-host today, Julio Fonseca.
Bueno, pues muchas gracias, Tamara. Bienvenidos a todos ustedes a este encuentro mensual que ya es una tradición histórica de la solidaridad en Canadá y de todos los países del mundo. Para nosotros es un honor y un placer compartir con ustedes y es de mucha satisfacción e inspiración la solidaridad que recibe Cuba de todos sus amigos. Muchas gracias por esa solidaridad. Antes de continuar, nosotros en Toronto reconocemos que nuestra reunión se celebra en el territorio tradicional de los Mississaugas of the Credit, los Anishinaabe, los Chippewas y otras primeras naciones. Y hoy es el hogar de las naciones Inuit y Métis. Toronto está cubierto bajo el Tratado 13 con los Mississaugas of the Credit. Como les decía, no nos cansaremos de exigir en nombre de nuestras familias el cese de todo este sistema de sanciones y prohibiciones que componen el bloqueo del gobierno de los Estados Unidos, que viola los derechos de todos los cubanos y pretende rendir por hambre y necesidades al pueblo cubano. El ejemplo de resistencia del pueblo cubano quedará en la historia como expresión única de la lucha de un pueblo entero contra el intento de la nación más rica y poderosa que haya existido jamás de doblegarlo y someterlo a través del sistema de sanciones que forman el bloqueo. Cuba sufre una persecución tenaz por parte de Estados Unidos de cada operación comercial que realiza. Esto es abusivo y muestra la identidad hegemónica de los Estados Unidos. Estados Unidos continúa sancionando al pueblo cubano por defender su derecho a la autodeterminación y a la dignidad ganada. Nosotros debemos seguir nuestra lucha en las redes sociales y a través de las protestas y caravanas de autos que cada mes ocurren en muchas ciudades del mundo. Este piquete virtual es solo una muestra de esa lucha que continuará hasta que Estados Unidos levante este bloqueo contra el pueblo cubano. Muchas gracias a todos ustedes por levantarse por Cuba. Abajo el bloqueo y que viva Cuba libre. All right, so changing language now, and we are going to offer a summary of what we will have today. Today, we have an excellent program to unite and raise our voice against the cruel and illegal U.S. blockade against Cuba. Speakers and video greetings from Cuba, the U.S., Australia, Canada, and Quebec. Following the speakers, we will open for short greetings from representatives of member organizations of the Canadian Network on Cuba. Throughout the program, you can type messages and greetings into the chat on Zoom and Facebook. To conclude the virtual picket, those who wish to participate in a group photo will be invited by the co-chairs to turn on their cameras to join in. More specific instructions will be given by the co-chairs at that time to walk everybody through the process. So Tamara, do we have Samira?
No, Samira is going to come on a little bit later, so let's go to Ike. All right.
I continue.
Yes,
So,
please go ahead.
yes. Ike Nahem, a longtime anti-imperialist and socialist activist. He is a central organizer of the U.S.-Cuba Normalization Conference and a founder of the New York-New Jersey Cuba Sea Coalition. Ike is a retired armed track locomotive engineer and member of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, a division of the Teamsters Union. And we have the pleasure to have Ike with us live now. Ike.
Thank you, Julio and Tamara. It's always a pleasure to be working with and doing activity together with the sisters and brothers of the Canadian Network. That collaboration over the last 2 years has really advanced the Cuba Solidarity movement in the Americas for sure. Do you want me to just give some opening remarks? Or how do you want to do this?
So I do see that Samira has just rejoined us, and she's on a bit of a time deadline. So maybe what we'll do is we'll go to Samira, and then we'll come back to you, Ike. I know you were recently in Cuba, so we'd love to hear about what you experienced there in terms of, the Cuban people and understanding the blockade. And we're also looking forward to hearing from Cesar more about the exciting program happening in New York City and online this weekend. So Julio, would you be able to introduce Dr. Samira Addrey, and then we'll give her the space because I know her time is very limited.
Okay. So yes, welcome, Dr. Samira. Samira Mifatou Addrey is a Ghanaian-born, United States-raised, Cuban-seasoned graduate of the Latin American School of Medicine in Cuba. She is a physician, activist, and the current ELAM Scholarship Program Coordinator at IFCO Pastors for Peace. Samira, a pleasure.
Thank you, Julio. Thank you, Tamara. It's good to see you all and join you all tonight. It's an honor to join you all for sure in this monthly action organized by our friends in the Canadian Network on Cuba. I always draw strength and inspiration from this program because it brings so many people together from all over the world in support of Cuba and against the criminal and I'm going to say it in Spanish, but genocidal blockade by the United States government on Cuba. Tonight I've been asked to speak on some of the ways that the blockade impacted my experience at the Latin American School of Medicine, because I was there for 7 years, and it impacted my life, but I can say that my experiences were rich in spite of the blockade and also precisely because of the blockade. The Latin American School of Medicine in Cuba gave my comrades and I the space to grow and fortify ourselves in the values of altruism and putting humanity first in all our endeavors. We lived in very basic conditions at school, and we struggled with the same shortages that our Cuban professors, workers, and friends had been tackling for years before our stay there. That school, that started in 1999, has graduated more than 30,000 physicians from over 120 countries, and it is an incubator for radical solutions for global health. It is where we often struggled with limited resources like water shortages, electrical interruptions, scarcity of products, overpriced goods, transportation difficulties, etc. But we made it through day by day because we were supported by the finest teachers and workers, many of whom were women. And I highlight that because this March is Women's History Month. And it is also the month of elimination of racism. And I just want to say that our school and the student population was overwhelmingly feminine, number one. That is very rare in a medical setting, in a medical school setting. And it was also heavily people of color. So that again is overwhelmingly rare in the medical field. We know that medicine is a colonialist project, the way it was created, and its intent to study human disease and try and tackle disease or cure it was mainly ramped up during the time of slavery. And we know that physicians, who were mostly white men, reaped a lot of their knowledge from the first peoples of the world. And essentially, while relying on the first peoples and a lot of the African slaves in this part of the world to tend to the health issues and problems of the entire population, the credit would later be given to white men. So the fact that we are trained in Cuba in a very humanistic fashion is a direct counterattack to that long history of abuse and resource grabbing in terms of our humanity. And it was impactful because although we are learning conventional medicine, we were learning from a majority of women professors, doctors, and when we would go into communities and we would work at the polyclinics and the medical consultorios in each block, we worked with a lot of nurses who were men and women. So it wasn't also heavily one gender either. We saw the representation in every strata of Cuban society of women. And it was something that really impacted us and made us personally, those of us who were women, stronger in a lot of the ways that we didn't imagine. We learned a lot of techniques about how to resolve problems from our women professors, about how to go about creatively, innovatively resolving our issues without having to overspend and without having to depend on an unnatural source of products throughout the year. Cuba is a place where things are there in season and based on what is available to the government because of the blockade, because of the layers of difficulties that are placed on the government in terms of acquiring resources. It's a place where you don't always have certain things all year round. So we had to really think on our feet. We had to pull on the knowledge base that the Cuban people had for over 60 years of tackling these kind of situations. And it made us better physicians and better human beings. We understood that the world that we live in right now is at a very fragile moment environmentally. We did not waste a lot of things. We knew how to recycle because you just had to. And it made no sense for you to keep acquiring and wasting resources when you could reuse what you have. So that in and of itself is a lesson that I think many of us, it's been commercialized in the rest of the world. To be environmentally conscious has been commercialized, and it's an abuse in a strategy that is of our first peoples, of our native peoples from all over the world. And so you learn a lot of things in Cuba that we can't put money to. And when I even think of my experiences in terms of the efforts to eliminate racism and the representation of what some would call Afro-Cubans in different spheres of society, and seeing that, for example, every day on national news, anchors of color, seeing our professors, men and women of color at different levels, seeing government officials of color, and also a lot of them women. Just a few weeks ago, there was a news article stating how Cuba and Nicaragua are joined Rwanda in being the only countries that have gained gender parity in terms of parliamentary representation in government. That is amazing, and it also speaks to the fact that the so-called developed countries have a lot to learn from countries like Cuba, Nicaragua, and Rwanda. So I could go on and on about my experience, but I am proud to say that even the U.S. delegation that has been studying in Cuba and has graduated from Cuba is predominantly women and predominantly of color, and we are changing the game wherever we are. Because when you see an ELAM grad, you see the representation of Cuban humanity, of Cuban society, and the values that they raised us with for over 7 years. We became adults in that country. So I just want everyone to continue fighting to end this blockade, because it is really more than inhumane. It is a grave injustice. And every day, the most basic needs that people should have are being stripped away from them. The access to those things are being stripped away from them for the sake of implementing some political theory that in and of itself is not in practice in our own United States. So we have to keep pushing back. An alternative is allowed in the world, and Cuba should be allowed to choose what it wants to do. And we should respect that. We should all respect that. So I just want to continue to applaud the efforts that all the activists and community members have been putting in day after day, month after month, in actions like this, and so much that has happened in the solidarity movement over these past 2 years, especially with this pandemic. It is amazing, and it just continues to give us the force to push forward, because as the oppressor is continuing to ramp up his plans, we must also ramp up our plans in our plans of liberation. So thank you, and continue the fight. Hasta la victoria siempre.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Samira, for that clear message of solidarity and resistance. Thank you so much. And now we have the pleasure to hear from Ike. Ike, the mic is yours. On mute.
Sorry, Ike, you're muted. You're muted, Mike. Ike.
You'd think after hundreds and thousands of these things I've learned, but in any case, I want to again thank the Canadian Network, not just for tonight's program and inviting us. We'll be able to talk about this conference that you're here for, but also just for the work that you do over many years. It's been very important in the past period to strengthen U.S.-Canada collaboration. It's been a big benefit for the movement as a whole. We've been working together, and to the point where I think we're starting to conquer in our united front the practice, and we're getting comfortable with working together in a non-sectarian way around this beautiful cause of ending this horrible blockade and showing solidarity with the people and the revolutionary government in Cuba. I think, all of us are always grappling with the question of the cruelty, the inhumanity, the hypocrisy, all of these things about the blockade. We know all that. The question that we have to ask is, okay, why do they do it? Why does this gigantic, if relatively declining empire with all its might and power, why is it so focused on this island of 11.3 million people that does not have a great economic, financial weight in the world? What is it about the Cuban Revolution that resonates so much that it causes this really cruel reaction? Is it an irrational action? I hear a lot of times activists say this irrational blockade, this crazy blockade. I don't think it is that, at least in the real sense of the word. From their point of view, if we understand it as a supremely, overwhelmingly political act, it's not to destroy. I mean, it has that purpose of the Cuban economy because it's a great competition to the mighty U.S. capital. No, it's not because of that. It's because of the political example and how important that is, especially in this crisis-ridden state of the world capitalist order that we find ourselves in. And in that sense, that's been true ever since the Cuban Revolution triumphed on January 1st, 1959. It's always had that example of how through the working people being in power, socially and politically, and being the dominant force in power in the society, that results in certain things that can cause people to see that there is an alternative. When Cuba conquered illiteracy, when Cuba established, after half of its doctors, 6,000 doctors in Cuba before the revolution, 3,000 of them left Cuba, part of the professional classes, many of whom, not all, fled. The average Cuban peasant maybe never saw a doctor in their lives, but ELAM is an example of the tens of thousands of doctors that's graduated. Cuba graduates more doctors every year than were in the entire country before the revolution. So that, the fight against racism, the elevation of women, all these are political examples that Washington and the powers that be try to suppress. We see them doing that now around the vaccines. I mean, how many average people in the United States or Canada know, I mean, that Cuba has produced at least 3 and is working on 2 more highly efficacious vaccines. They vaccinated the whole population. They're offering that to other countries. It's an amazing story that not completely suppressed, but attempted to suppress. Now, Erin, who's a fellow solidarity activist, my wife, Erin, we just got back from Cuba to help promote the upcoming conference this weekend, which Cesar will talk more about. And I just want to give a few impressions, and maybe in the discussion we can go into this more. My impression was that Cuba has passed an important turning point. The July 11th protests, which were highly orchestrated by the US, I'm not saying they're totally a creation of the US, they stem from the impact of the blockade but that was defeated. The period between July 11th and November 15th, Cuban society opened up again, and we could see signs of that, of Havana, where we were the whole time, coming to life. The lines were shorter. They were moving more for food distribution, dealing with the really stressful problems. But at the same time, we saw more people on the street. Everybody was masked. We saw, more people in restaurants, few tourists coming in. The society is coming back to life after this great victory. But at the same time, we saw a lot of stresses. We brought a small amount of material aid in the form of insulin and over-the-counter drugs, and there was a special ceremony that ECAP organized at the Diabetes Center. And this was not a huge amount, but it was, we got some progressive endocrinologists that donated some insulin. And I was told that even this small amount would probably save some lives because of these stresses. Can you imagine a blockade that keeps people from getting insulin? And I could go on and on and on. This is beyond cruel. This has a real political purpose, and it tells you how weak their position is. That was some of my impressions. We had tremendous meetings the whole week with leaders of the trade unions. They're looking forward to the May Days. Is going to be a big May Day, the first big one they've been able to have. So, I could go on, but the Cuban Revolution is alive and fighting, and those of us that love it and support it in the United States and Canada are gearing up for the next phase of the struggle. And we feel that despite what's on the surface, that Biden's blockade is under tremendous pressure. It's by no means gaining traction. We think it'll have less traction in the coming period in Latin America and around the world. So I'll stop there, and maybe we can take some of these questions up in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ike, for your intervention and for bringing that little recent report from Cuba. That was fantastic. So I just want to update folks on a couple of program elements today. We were meant to have GRETEL ROSSET from the Cuban Federation of Women with us here on Zoom. She's actually in New York right now with the Federation of Cuban Women delegation, but they have been very busy and very popular. If any of you follow her on Facebook or Twitter, or follow the FMC International Twitter handle, I can put that in the chat. She's been posting amazing photos of the work that the Federation of Cuban Women has been doing, meeting with other international women's organizations at the United Nations. So unfortunately, getting on the Zoom call this evening just wasn't possible for her, but she does send us a huge hug of solidarity and her greetings. And she will be speaking at the New York conference this weekend, March 19th and 20th, which Cesar is about to talk a little bit more about. Again, I just posted information about how to join that conference online if you're not in New York with us, with you all. So I hope that you will join. Again, I am here live from New York already, very excited to be here along with fellow Vancouver Cuba Solidarity organizer Allison Bodine. We're both going to be speaking at the conference this weekend. And again, an amazing delegation of Cuban women will also be speaking. So we hope that you will tune in, even if you can't be live in New York, tune in virtually to enjoy this important event. I'd now like to welcome to the microphone Cesar Omar Sanchez. Cesar is an organizer with the International U.S.-Cuba Normalization Conference Committee. He has been a humble and dedicated organizer of our ever-expanding website with the Saving Lives campaign, with the U.S.-Cuba Normalization campaign, and also with a special website for this conference. He's also an organizer with the U.S. New York, New Jersey Cuba Sí Coalition, and an advisory board member of Pro Libertad, a campaign to free all political prisoners. All right, welcome, Cesar. Please unmute and join us on the picket.
Well, thank you, Tamara. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful, wonderful introduction. Wow, when you said it, it makes me tiring just thinking about it. I want to thank Tamara. I want to thank you, Julio Fonseca. I want to thank Aza in the background. I want to thank Allison Bodine, by the way. Welcome, Allison Bodine and Tamara in the belly of the beast. As we are still, unfortunately, still fighting against an illegal blockade against Cuba. But never, it doesn't really matter, the struggle will continue. We will continue to struggle. We will continue to fight for Cuba and the Cuban Revolution and what they stand for. As Dr. SAMIRA MIFATOU indicated in her discussion, the dire circumstances because of the blockade, you know, it's horrific, you know, but that does not mean that we just have to just give up. That does not mean that we have to just, you know, just pretty much, well, there's nothing much we can do but just kind of like fold and just pretty much pray that the US government will say something. No, it won't. To accomplish that goal, we have to keep on pushing and pushing and pushing for changes to lift the blockade against Cuba. Well, I could go into the whole historic. I won't get into that. You know, I could go and more into the more details, but I think Ike has pretty much covered it. A little bit of his recent trip to Cuba. But I encourage all my brothers and sisters who is right here watching this. I encourage you all in Canada, in US, in all Latin America, Europe, if possible, if you're reaching out there, if you're listening, I encourage you to go to the iucnc.org site, where we're going to have a virtual conference. It'll be live streamed from the People's Forum in New York City. And just to give you a highlight and pretty much tell it, we're going to have the FMC speaking. We have Teresa Amarel from the FMC Secretary General. We have GRETEL ROSSET, that unfortunately would be great. She was not able to come today in the panel, but nevertheless, she will be at the People's Forum this weekend on Saturday. We have Osmayada Hernandez Belen. She will also be joining us, all from the FMC. We also have a fantastic film show, Cuba and Africa, from filmmaker Nagash Abdurrahman. We have our sister, Helen YAFFE, who will be talking about the climate crisis and her new documentary, Tarea Vida, Cuba's approach to climate crisis. We have role of Indigenous women protecting environment, Cheryl Whibbs, Maya speaking as well. We have other fantastic speakers, and one of them is actually our Canadian sister, Alison Bodine, that will be speaking, along with Regina Corbien, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. And they'll be talking more about the Cuba's Life Task and the documentary of Helen YAFFE. We have Carlos Lazo, the Cuban-American leader who has transformed the U.S.-Cuba policy of, who will be speaking at a rally, along with Chris Smalls, the lead organizer of the Amazon Labor Union Fighting Organizer. And of course, we have on Sunday, which is on March 20th, we have another panel. We'll be talking about the Cuba and battles of ideas with our sister Tamara Hansen, she will be speaking along with Carlos Lazo. And of course, we have a fantastic performance from Arturo Olfato. Now, it's a lot that I mentioned. I could go on, and I might have skipped a few, but only because it's such a huge program, I can't really talk to the whole program. But if you do want to check out the program, I encourage you to please visit us at iucnc.org. You could register, pre-register, and once you register, you will get a live stream video link coming from the iucnc.org website. And that's pretty much it. I just want to thank again for the Canadian Network on Cuba organizing this panel. This is a very important discussion that we're having. We have to keep on pushing, keep having that open dialogue discussions on Cuba. We have to keep on and just keep on fighting, my brothers and sisters. Don't give up. And I hope to see you there. And if you're not there, sign up and register, and you'll see the live stream video conference at the People's Forum, New York City. Thank you.
Many people comment to me about how beautiful the artistic presentation of our work has been over the last few years. And I want to give Brother Cesar a big credit for that, because he's our artistic as well as political leader in this effort. And the work is just so magnificent.
Yeah. Thank you. But remember, it's all about Cuba.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much, Cesar. Yes, I said website organizer earlier, and I was reminded really website designer would be a better term. So yes, thank you so much, Cesar, for your excellent work. So we're now going to go to some video greetings that we've received, which we're very excited to share with you today. We have video from Dr. Helen YAFFE, who is currently speaking virtually at an event in Albany, New York. Helen YAFFE is coming on a virtual tour of the United States and also to Vancouver, Canada for March and April. She was supposed to come and join live in the United States, but unfortunately there's been some challenges with her visa. So hopefully she'll be coming live to the United States in a few months. But Dr. Helen YAFFE is an author, activist, and senior lecturer at the University of Glasgow. She's also, as was mentioned, the director of the new film, Tarea Vida, about Cuba and climate change, as well as has made an excellent documentary about Cuba and the battle against COVID-19. And Helen YAFFE sent us this video this evening in solidarity with the virtual picket, and again to encourage folks to participate in the important conference this weekend. We're also going to have a video coming up from our friends in Perth, Australia. The Australia-Cuba Friendship Society of Western Australia has sent us a video from their picket action today in front of the United States Consulate in Perth, Australia. We've also received a wonderful video from our friends in Ottawa, Cuba Connections, who were today in front of the US Embassy in Ottawa, Canada's capital city. And as was mentioned by Dr. SAMIRA Addrey, March is an important month. It marks not only International Women's Day on March 8th, but March 21st is the International Day for the Elimination of Racism. And we thought that I just wanted to thank SAMIRA for bringing such an important message about how Cuba connects the issues of battling sexism and the issues of battling racism in society, and how she felt that she was so supported, especially by women at the Latin American School of Medicine and by people of color. And in order to kind of celebrate International Women's Day, we also wanted to share with you all a trailer for a documentary called Mujeres, Cubanas en la Revolución, which means women, Cuban women in the revolution. And some of you may have seen this documentary before. It is available online, but we just wanted to bring the trailer to kind of bring a sense of what International Women's Day means for Cuban women, and in celebration of that spirit. So we're going to go now to those video greetings, again from Dr. Helen YAFFE, from Australia-Cuba Friendship Society of Western Australia, from Ottawa-Cuba Connections, and also watch this trailer from Mujeres.
So I'm sending solidarity greetings from Glasgow in the UK. I can't be joining you tonight on the virtual picket because I'm speaking at another event in Albany, which is the first stop on a virtual tour of the United States and Vancouver, which I'm doing over the next 3 to 4 weeks. I'll also be participating in this weekend's US-Cuba Normalization Committee's fantastic conference that's taking place in New York. So I really wish I could be there in person. If you can get down there in person at the People's Forum, then you definitely should do that. There's some fantastic speakers from Cuba, from the Women's Federation. And then I will be speaking at another set of events which take place around the United States and I'll just scan through a list here. After Albany and New York, it's Charleston, Chicago, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Portland, Vancouver, San Francisco, I think San Diego, and Chicago. So you can find the website with details of the dates and venues for those. Most of them are in-person events, and I'll just be intervening on Zoom, and they've got fantastic speakers. And it's just really great to see so much national mobilization in support of Cuba's right to determine its own system. As you probably know, last month marked the 60th anniversary of the full embargo, as they call it in the United States, on Cuba. We prefer to refer to it as a blockade because it obstructs Cuba's trade, interaction, engagement with the rest of the world. 60 years of sanctions. It's the longest and most comprehensive set of sanctions in modern history, and it's time it stopped. So I hope you have a great event, and looking forward to catching up with all of you at some point during the conference in New York or the following activities that are happening. There's a lot happening, so get involved, bring someone else to the next event you go to.
Cuba sí, bloqueo no. 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 Cuba yes, bloqueo no. Cuba sí now. End the blockade now. End the blockade now. End the blockade now. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Sí, bloqueo no.
Speaking here today on the lands of the Wajak people of the Noongar Boodja, and we pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging. It always was, it always will be Aboriginal land. We're from the Australia-Cuba Friendship Society, and we're here today in front of the US Consulate in Perth to talk about the US blockade on Cuba. This unfair, unjust, immoral blockade has been in place for over 60 years. Countries all around the world vote every year for this blockade to be lifted, including Australia. Only the US and Israel have voted for the blockade to remain in place. Shame! Shame! US, shame! During this time of COVID, when the greatest cooperation is needed, Cuba has still continued to send its medical brigades to assist other countries. At the same time, the US have increased the blockade on Cuba and stopped Cuba from receiving syringes and medical care and medicines that it needs. This is an act of attempted genocide on behalf of the US. The US has put Cuba on a list of countries that sponsor terrorism, but it is the US who are the terrorists. Out of Cuba! Hands off Cuba, lift the blockade!
Hands off Cuba, lift the blockade!
People here today have got a message that they would like to send to the US administration. So I'll hand over to each of them. Justice for the Cuban people now. End the blockade.
End the blockade on Cuba.
While Cuba sends medical brigades, the US blocked delivery of medicine and syringes to Cuba. Do you believe it?
Yes, lift the blockade.
Lift the blockade on Cuba.
Lift the blockade in Cuba. They put Cuba on the list. The US is the real terrorist. Take Cuba off the list of countries that sponsor terrorism now. Take Cuba off the list now.
Take Cuba off the list now.
Viva
Viva!
Cuba!
Viva!
Lift the blockade on Cuba now!
Lift the blockade on Cuba now.
Shame, US, shame!
Shame, US, shame.
¿Qué siento que me da la revolución?
La revolución cubana, para mí, la revolución cubana, yo solo puedo imaginar qué sería mi familia sin la revolución.
Me hubiera casado a los 14 o 15 años, como tantas mujeres, me hubiera enamorado de cualquier guajiro, me hubiera llenado de hijos y no hubiera estudiado y hecho nada.
A las mujeres nos ha dado todo, nos ha dado independencia, nos ha dado libertad. Aquí las mujeres somos ingenieros, médicos, científicos, somos de todo. La discriminación en Cuba no existe de las mujeres.
Este centro tiene alrededor de 1.400 trabajadores. El 52% somos mujeres. De las que tienen algún nivel de responsabilidad, el 45% somos mujeres.
En muchas organizaciones de masas y políticas, la mujer está presente en cargos de dirección decisorios. Sin embargo, en el ámbito familiar, sí todavía hay que hacer mucho.
Aide Santa María era una persona muy sensible.
Y entonces yo le decía, ay Celia, yo quiero irme para mi casa porque yo quiero volver a ver a mamá. Y ella me transmitía un cariño, una cosa así que, como si ella me conociera de toda la vida.
Y Vilma es una mujer que tiene una luz larga, tremenda. Quien realmente inició la educación sexual en Cuba fue Vilma, en el reconocimiento a la igualdad de cada persona.
Y todo eso lo hizo, como decimos en Cuba, sin perder la ternura.
¡Revolución de todos los colores! ¡Socialismo sí! ¡Homofobia no!
Yo creo que la mujer cubana, incluso esas revolucionarias, pero las revolucionarias de la vida cotidiana, con un país que hace sacrificios enormes para salir adelante, son héroes de este tiempo también.
Cada persona que uno salva en un país donde va a trabajar, cada cosa buena que hace, cada agradecimiento, no es solamente a mí, es a mi país, es a mi sistema de salud, a mi sistema de educación, es a mi sistema social.
El socialismo no es solo distribuir la riqueza de otra manera en la sociedad, es sobre todo
cambiar la concepción de las relaciones humanas.
Todo lo que somos es la revolución.
All right, so again, that last was a trailer for a fantastic documentary called Mujeres. It is available for free online, and we'll be posting the link in the chat if you'd like to watch it and enjoy what a fantastic documentary by a Resumen Latino. We are also, of course, very thankful for our friends in Perth, Australia, and for our friends in Ottawa for those amazing videos. There was also a rally today in Montreal in front of the US consulate in Montreal. And we will have Garnett Colley from La Table de Concertation et de Solidarité Québec-Cuba speak on that later. And we have a photo to share from their event. And many of you know that in our previous months, almost every month, we have had a video greeting from Kiev, Ukraine, where our friends in the Committee to Stop the Blockade have been organizing monthly actions in front of the US Embassy in Kiev. Of course, we know that at this time it is not possible. The situation in Kiev is very challenging. But I would like to let folks know that I have been in touch with our friend Vyacheslav Karpenko and our friends in the Stop the Blockade of Cuba Committee in Kiev, and that they are standing strong and doing well. And despite the challenging situations, send their greetings to the virtual picket today, standing in solidarity with Cuba, despite the challenges. So we send our love, we send our solidarity and our support as they continue there. And we hope to have them here with us very soon again at the virtual picket. So I would like to now hand the microphone back over to Julio for a couple of announcements.
Okay. Muchas gracias, Tamara. Thank you very much. One of the messages is Elizabeth Hill, co-chair of the Canadian Network on Cuba and president of the Canadian Cuban Friendship Association in Toronto, could not make it tonight, so she's sending her regrets. Soon we will be going to greetings from CNN member groups. So if you're here representing one of the CNN groups, please send a message to Tamara so she can add you to the list of greetings in that section. Another announcement, the monthly caravans and rallies against the US blockade on Cuba are taking place on the last Sunday of the month on March 27th this year. Actions will be taking place in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and other cities across Canada. Check the CNN website for more information as it becomes available. Our website is CanadianNetworkOnCuba.ca. And as announced by Erin Philly-Nahem, the US-Cuba Normalization Conference is scheduled for March 18, 2021 in New York City, and online has been activated once more with a delegation from the FMC expected to participate. Please visit the website for updates. The website has been shared in the chat. So, Tamara.
Gracias, Julio. Thank you so much. A couple further announcements. As Dr. Helen YAFFE mentioned in her video, again, Dr. Helen YAFFE is an author, activist, and senior lecturer at the University of Glasgow, and she is participating in a virtual speaking tour across the United States and also to Vancouver, Canada. Some events will be happening in person and some will be available online, happening March 17th until April 10th. The tour website will be posted in the chat on Zoom, where you can find out more information about upcoming events. Vancouver Communities in Solidarity with Cuba, along with Friends of Cuba Against the US Blockade Vancouver, and the Seattle Cuba Friendship Committee will be co-organizing a special event with Helen YAFFE against climate change and showing her documentary film Tarea Vida on Friday, April 8th at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and 9 p.m. Atlantic. There will be a registration link posted in the Zoom chat for you to join in on that particular stop on the Helen YAFFE tour, but there are other events as well that are going to focus on COVID-19, and there will be a link for that in the chat as well. And I would also like to invite folks to our next monthly virtual picket against the US blockade. It will be Sunday, April 17th at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, and 8 p.m. Atlantic. The registration link will be in the chat on Zoom, and this will be once more a chance for us to come together and raise our voices against the blockade. GRETEL Marante from the FMC has promised she will make us a video for that event, and also we will have some speakers from Colombia as well as our friends from Perth, Australia. So looking forward to that event. So again, we're now opening up the microphone for greetings from member groups of the Canadian Network on Cuba. And if you are representing a CNC member group and you would like to bring a short 1 to 2 minute greeting to the virtual picket today, we would love to hear from you. So please just let me know in the chat. Julio, in the chat, I've just sent you our first 2 speakers that I'm going to be upgrading if you'd like to welcome them.
All right, Tamara. So our first speaker will be Janine Solanki, the Che Guevara Volunteer Brigade. So Janine.
She's just upgrading. Give her 1 second.
All right, there is Janine.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Janine.
Great to see you all tonight on all the different time zones I know people are joining from. I'm very excited that in just under 6 weeks, the 28th Che Guevara Volunteer Work Brigade will be returning to Cuba. This is a unique way to really experience Cuba with on-the-ground experiences, to show our solidarity with the Cuban people, to see firsthand the achievements of the Cuban Revolution, as we're talking about today, also to see the impacts of the US blockade on the daily lives of the Cuban people. So our brigadistas and myself will be embarking on an excellent program from April 26th to May 10th that our friends at the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the Peoples and Amistur have put together for us. As I think everyone probably knows, but the Che Guevara Volunteer Work Brigade is a project of the Canadian Network on Cuba with ECAP, the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the Peoples, and have been traveling to Cuba since 1993. So I want to share a few quick highlights of our 2-week program, which will be going to Havana and Santa Clara. We'll be joining, very excitingly, we'll be joining the Cuban people to celebrate International Workers' Day on May 1st in Havana, which is truly an impressive and inspiring event to participate in. We'll also participate in the May 2nd International Solidarity Conference with delegates from all around the world. We'll be visiting the recently opened Fidel Castro Center in Havana, and everyone I've talked to who has been there have said it's like a must see. So we will be seeing it, I think, on our second day there. We'll be learning about how Cuba developed the COVID-19 vaccines at the Cuban Vaccine Institute. We'll be meeting with many different organizations in Cuba, including CENASEX, Cuba's National Center for Sex Education, which is the driving force of the LGBTQ movement in Cuba. And then, of course, as we're going to Santa Clara, also known as Che's City, we'll be visiting the Che Guevara Mausoleum and Museum, seeing where Che Guevara and other guerrilla fighters are interred, visiting many historical sites, and of course, as we're in Cuba, we will have a chance to visit Cuba's beautiful beaches, to learn a few salsa steps so we can keep up. And last but not least, doing some volunteer work, as this is a volunteer work brigade. We have about 5 half days of volunteer work, which is usually agricultural work. So I hope that this highlights are convincing some people listening in to join us. It's not too late to join us, and the brigade is open to everyone of all physical abilities, of all ages. We've had brigadistas from 7 to 86 years old, and also not just from Canada. If you're listening in from somewhere else, you can still join us. So I will put some more info in the chat. If you have any questions, you can contact me, Janine Solanki. I'm the national coordinator of the Che Guevara Brigade. And also, we have a very exciting new promotional video. I'm not sure if that is going to be shown, but I will be putting the link to that in the chat so you can check that out too. All right, I think that's it for me. I will hand it over, and I hope to see some of you with me in Cuba in a few weeks.
Gracias, Janine. Sorry to interrupt, but I've been told by our tech team that we have a special promotional video for the Che Guevara Brigade. And since this is a project of the Canadian Network on Cuba, I think we have to cede the floor and give that extra time to show this important video. So let's go now to that.
¿Y qué pasó? ¿Y tú qué me decías? Que yo nunca podría. Pues mira que aquí estoy, trayendo guapería. Con el Sambo 21 vengo suave y vacilando. Y a todo el mundo aquí estoy invitando. Pa' que te agarres, pa' que te subas.
De Cuba traigo el son ritmo sabroso, de Cuba dulce caña y rico ron, café como no hay otro en el Caribe, y el más chiflado golpe del bongo. Por Cuba tengo la sangre caliente, en Cuba guardo el alma y corazón, y se alza con alegre melodía mi voz cuando mi negro rompe un guaguancó. Canta conmigo a pecho abierto esta canción que me ha brotado de mi alma y corazón. Unamos todos la razón sabor, pregúntamelo. Pero qué cosa es esto, oye, lo que tiene Cuba, sentimiento. Pero qué cosa es esto, lo que tiene Cuba. Ay, qué rico papacito así, ay, qué rico papacito así, muévelo así. Pero qué cosa es esto, lo que tiene Cuba. Cubita la bella que tiene palmera, ron y tabaco y mulatas estrellas. Aquí viene papá, los metales de Songo 21. Me llama tu gracia, tu gala, llamar tu genio, tu gente, tu africanidad. Oye, que me llame ese mulato ya, que yo quiero pasar con él un buen rato. Lo que tú quieres, lo que me das, lo que me debe, lo que me va.
Fantastic, fantastic. You know, I was gonna.
You're on mute, Tamara.
Fantastic. You know, I was gonna get some coffee, but after watching that just woke me up.
It is an amazing video, Janine. Excellent, fantastic. It brought to me so many memories of Cuba. Amazing. Thank you so much.
I have to send a special thank you to Aza Rojbi, who's the coordinator of Friends of Cuba against the U.S. Blockade Vancouver. She's the one who designed and put together the video and also spent a good part of her brigade time in Cuba filming little shots, thinking about how to promote the brigade. She's also a member of the Che Brigade committee. And if you're a member of the Canadian Network on Cuba and you're interested to get more involved in helping us promote and build the Che Guevara Volunteer Work Brigade, please reach out to Janine as well. We're always looking for more members. Okay, Julio, did you want to introduce Garnett?
Yes, I have the pleasure to introduce Garnett Colley from la Table de Concertación de Solidarité Québec, Cuba. Garnett, a pleasure as usual.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, bringing you greetings from the Table de Concertation de Solidarité Québec, Cuba. We once again held our live picket. Correction though, because of the lifting of the sanitary restrictions, it was decided to go back to a place where we are always extremely well received, although it was the nicest day we've had so far this year and we found ourselves inside rather than outside. In any case, we went to the Berry UQAM metro station, and this is a link of 3 metro lines, connecting point for 3 metro lines, and also has the entry to the Université de Québec à Montréal University. So a large numbers of young people passing through as well. We had, as you saw, we had our banner, slogans denouncing the criminal US blockade, calling on the Canadian government to respect Cuba's sovereignty. 2 people were handing out a leaflet, and started out with one person collecting signatures, but one other person had to join him because we were caught with people lining up to sign the petition of the table de consultation. People needed no convincing. All we had to do was point to the people collecting the signatures against the blockade, and people were lining up and signing it. And that's basically today's report. We will, of course, be back on the 27th with the Caravan Puentes de Amor. And it will be starting as usual at the Parc La Fontaine. People start gathering at 1 o'clock. We have a bit of a rally before we head out through the town towards the US consulate. And then it is followed by a picket at the US consulate after that. And look forward to seeing anybody who might be in Montreal. You're welcome to join us. And know that we were with you wherever you're participating.
Thank you very much, Annette. Thank you for your support, continuous support to the good cause of Cuba. And now we have another pleasure, and it is, we have Randy Long, who I guess is in transit in Panama at this moment, and he has joined our webinar, and we will have Randy talk now. Randy.
Thank you, Julio, and how wonderful it is to see everybody. Of course, I don't have to explain to this group that the blockade is for real, and I don't get a chance to see everyone as I do. In terms of the very positive things, I really have to say what a massive impact, disproportionately big, that this and our organization has on people in Cuba, particularly during the time that Janine was there with the brigade. People spoke of them, people referred to me frequently. The brigade seemed to be everywhere. People were very impressed. People are very, very pleased that this level of support can continue to come, not just from Canada, but of course, from Colombia, from Ireland, from the Ukraine, from Australia, from places all around the world, because the time is very difficult in Cuba right now. The spirits of the people still are high. This is a very worthwhile project. Thank you, every single one of you, for doing this. My very best to you. Such a pleasure to be here again with you tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you for that message. And now we will welcome Robbie, representing Friends of Cuba Against the Blockade in Vancouver. Asa.
You're still muted, Asa.
I just realized that when I noticed everybody's face looking at me. I think we're all done so many different Zoom meetings that at one point your brain kind of goes blank. So gracias, Julio. Thank you, everybody. It's actually, I think today's picket is another symbol of how united we are across borders. Myself here on the West Coast in Vancouver, Tamara, who joined Cesar and Ike's team in New York, Julio, who's all the way in Toronto, Randy, who's in Panama, other people that are across the country here in Canada, and I see people basically signing in from all over the world and all over North America. So greetings and solidarity to all of you from Friends of Cuba Against the US Blockade Vancouver. This monthly virtual events have been very important for all of us to keep in contact, but to keep pushing the momentum and to solidify our relationships in fighting against the blockade. I also wanted to point out, and we've posted it earlier in the chat, that today's virtual picket is being also live streamed live on the ECAP, which is the Cuban Institution of Friendship with the People YouTube and Facebook pages. So we're reaching people outside of Canada, outside of North America, around the world that are part of the Solidarity movement. So I invite all of you to join us on this every month, every 17th of the month. If you happen to be in Montreal, join the folks there. If you happen to be in Australia, join people there, but you can always join us here virtually as well. And another thing that I wanted to point out, as Tamara has already announced it, is on Sunday, the 27th of March, we will be having another day, another Puentes de Amor, another day where we'll be building bridges of love between all of us around the world and Cuba. So here in Vancouver, Friends of Cuba Against the US Blockade will be hosting another care caravan. We will be driving through the streets of Vancouver with our flags, with our signs, and we tend to be lucky when it's a sunny day in terms of people are sitting outside in patios and walking, so we get a lot of honks and waves. So hoping for the sun, but no matter what the weather is, we're always out there putting the message of Cuba, putting the message against the blockade. So I will post in the chat the information about our action in Vancouver, but I also encourage you all, if you're attending or if you're organizing an action in your city, also please feel free to post it in the chat. I will also post the Canadian Network on Cuba website where you can find other actions across Canada. And I chose this background behind me today because I'm basically getting ready to go to Cuba with Janine and the brigade. So I wanted to continue to add to the enticement and pretend that I'm already in Cuba instead of this rainy Vancouver day. Solidarity and greetings to all, and I hope I see quite a few of you soon in Cuba. Thank you.
Gracias, Aza. Thank you so much to Aza. I've posted the information about the Vancouver car caravan in the chat. Julio might also mention it, but there is also a rally happening in Toronto on March 27th from 1 to 2 p.m. in front of the US Consulate in Toronto. I've posted that information in the chat as well. All right, we now have Brenda Cranny from the CCFA Niagara. She also posted about an upcoming event in the chat, and I said, come on, Brenda, come give us your announcement live.
Hi, greetings, solidarity greetings from CCFA Niagara. Finally, after 2 years, we're going to be meeting next month in person, so that'll be exciting. We have our annual Taste of Cuba barbecue on Sunday, August 21st, and this year it's being held at the Queenston Heights Pavilion in Queenston Heights Park, which is it's a bit easier for transportation to get there from Toronto or other areas. I also want to mention that I just returned from Cuba a couple of weeks ago, and I was fortunate to meet up with Yamila and Ivan from ECAP and deliver a couple of big suitcases of medical supplies that went to the Lennon Hospital. So that was very exciting, and kind of getting to enjoy the coffee at ECAP again. So thank you very much, and Viva Cuba.
Viva. All right, thank you so much, Brenda. And I really hope and encourage folks to attend that Taste of Cuba barbecue. Sounds pretty amazing. So if you're in the Toronto area, maybe even if you're just across the border in the US, you might want to head to Niagara for that exciting event. I would now like to hand over the microphone to my wonderful co-MC, Julio Fonseca, who is also of the Association of Cuban Residents in Toronto, Juan Gualberto Gomez, and he'll speak from his group now. Welcome, Julio.
Thank you again, Tamara. Yes, I also represent the Association of Cubans resident in Toronto, Juan Gualberto Gomez. And one of our members is actually listening to us. He's in the, within the attendees, and that's dancer and choreographer Jose Angel Carret, who is a renowned artist from Cuba living in Toronto. Thank you, Jose Angel, for being here. And I just wanted to give you an update on what we're doing at this point. As you know, we've been very active since the beginning of the pandemic, collecting funds and collecting medical supplies to be sent to Cuba. So last weekend, we had a very, very hard volunteer work in London, Ontario. We went there, members of the association, together with friends of Cuba from the area, and we filled a 40-feet container with 1,041 boxes of medical supplies, 3 beds, 5 wheelchairs, walkers, and all sorts of materials that we had in that storage place. And this is actually our 4th container, and it will go directly to the province of Holguín to help there with these supplies for the hospitals. Our association continues to be engaged totally with Cuba, defending its dignity and sovereignty, and fighting against the blockade that is asphyxiating our own families. Every time we go to Cuba, it is incredible to see the shortages that people in the streets are still facing. And we know that the main cause of this is the criminal blockade of the United States. So please stop asphyxiating our families. Say no to the blockade, and maybe one day soon we'll see this lifting of the blockade. Thank you so much on behalf of all the Cubans who support Cuba. Thank you so much. Tamara.
Gracias, Julio. Thank you so much, Julio. I do see that we have some other organizations represented on the meeting today, but I haven't heard from you in the chat. So if you are interested in speaking, let me know. But just to wrap up, I am here also representing Vancouver communities in solidarity with Cuba. And as I mentioned, we'll be supporting the Vancouver car caravan against the US blockade on Cuba. It will be technically 1 full year of car caravans. The 13th car caravan will be happening, 14th car caravan will be happening this month at the end of the month on Sunday, March 27th. We're also very excited to be working together with the Seattle Cuba Friendship Organization, as well as Friends of Cuba Against the US Blockade Vancouver, to bring the wonderful Helen YAFFE in her virtual tour to speak out against climate change and in solidarity with Cuba, and to understand and to share with the community in Vancouver what Cuba has been able to do in this battle against climate change, what I think is very impressive and really important for us to highlight in our movement. Overall, we're continuing to support these virtual picket actions. It's such an honor to be here with folks every month as we raise our united voices against the blockade. And we want to continue doing that. Looking forward to the April monthly picket and seeing everyone again. So thank you so much. Viva Cuba, abajo el bloqueo.
Viva Cuba.
Okay.
So we're now going to start upgrading folks for our group photo. So this takes a moment every time, but we basically will give you the ability to promote yourself to become a panelist. And once you promote yourself, it lets you turn on your camera, and then you can join us here on Zoom, and we'll take a beautiful group photo together. So again, muchas gracias de todo de estar aquí con nosotros por este evento tan importante contra el bloqueo contra Cuba, y vamos a seguir a nuestro foto de grupo. Disculpa. Para que podamos estar conjuntos. Y estoy aquí con mis amigas Peggy Gilpin y Allison Bodine en Nueva York. On est en train de vous donner la chance de devenir panéliste, et ceci vous donne la chance d'ouvrir vos caméras pour que nous puissions prendre le groupe de photos. Le photo de groupe, je m'excuse. Alors, s'il vous plaît, acceptez si vous voulez prendre part à cette action. Julio, would you like to give a few final notices?
Yes, I want to thank everybody again. Thank you so much for your support. This has become the monthly meeting for solidarity around the world, not only from the United States and Canada. And we always have such committed and wonderful activists that are still fighting against the blockade. Thank you so much. Cuba really appreciates this. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. So, Tamara.
Gracias, Julio. Estamos aquí, and I'm sending invitations to folks to become panelists. I'm still waiting to hear from 20 of you. So please look at your screen. It should give you the ability to accept being promoted to panelist, and come and join us in this group photo against the blockade.
David, un abrazo, David. Ahí tenemos un miembro de la asociación.
Down with the blockade.
Down with the blockade.
Down with the blockade.
Abajo el bloqueo.
Lift the blockade on Cuba.
Lift the blockade on Cuba.
Julio,
un abrazo, mi hermano.
Un abrazo, Carlos y Teddy.
Bloqueo no.
Sí, bloqueo no.
You're a very wonderful looking group of people. Thank you so much for coming together once again as we unite our voices against the US blockade on Cuba, as we come together every month to spread this important message of solidarity and support of the Cuban people. Abajo el bloqueo criminal de los Estados Unidos.
Abajo el bloqueo
criminal. El bloqueo criminal des États-Unis contre Cuba. And the blockade on Cuba.
And the
blockade.
All right, good night, everybody.
Night.
Buenas noches.
Oh, thank you, Brandy. All the way from Phoenix. You look amazing.
Hey.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Un placer, César.
Buenas noches.